Well, welcome in, everybody. Thanks for joining me on Easter Sunday. And I know that a lot of my regular followers may pop in a little bit later. Thank you if you're here already. I appreciate you being here. And I wanted to go over a little bit about last weekend. Last weekend, I didn't have a show. And that's, hey, I see some folks over on YouTube. Hello, hello. Uh, Last week I didn't have a show, a live show, because I was in Chicago. So in Chicago, I was there with the Pebeo uh, company. So this Pebeo they're a European paint manufacturer. We were introducing these paints, the Origin Acrylics paints, to students, high school students who are uh, um, in art programs, and there for scholarships and all kinds of stuff. So it was awesome. I had a great time in Chicago. And while I was at that show, I taught a workshop that I call Color Mixing Magic. So I wanted to show you that this is a handout that I did about color mixing magic. And I put in here some of my favorite color mixes. So for instance, here I have my favorite color mixes, and I have provided this handout on my website. So if you go to my website, let me show you that right here. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website as well. But if you look here, www.deetsart.com. I'll leave this up for a moment so you can take a picture of it if you want to. But if you go to my website, and then the first thing that comes up is the blog page. And with the blog page, it goes ahead and gives you the various articles for the workshops that I teach. So the workshop that I taught last week in Chicago, even though I wasn't here with you live on YouTube and whatnot, I made this handout available to you on my website in the blog post having to do with Chicago. So if you see the blog post that's there now and it says Pebeo Chicago, this handout that I made about color mixing is in there. Now, there's also a video in that blog post, which is a video that I did for Blick and Pebeo about introducing their new Origin acrylic paints and showing you a project that you can do with the paints. So that contains some of the color mixing information that's in here as well. And then if you look on YouTube under the lives and you look back a couple of weeks to one that says special, and it's about 45 minutes long, and it is a color mixing class. So it will reinforce some of the information that is on the handout, but the handout is available to you as a downloadable PDF on my website. So I encourage you to pop over to my website and take a look at that and download it for yourself to have your own notes. These are on the back, Tristina's favorite colors for color mixing. So this contains not only the name and color number from Pebeo, but it also contains the um, color code for all the colors that I like to use to mix with. Now, I mix with more than these, but if you were to be starting out with color mixing, then this is a good set of colors with these color codes to start with, because the color codes are going to be the same across different brands of paint. And so where Pebeo calls something phthalo emerald, cyanine emerald, the color code is PG7, and other companies call it phthalo green or phthalo green yellow shade or something like that. So I wanted to give you the color codes as well, so that if you have your own paints, like let's say you have a golden paint here, like this one, it says phthalo blue red shade, and somewhere on here It says it's PB15:0. That is the pigment. So the pigment code is usually somewhere on the tube or the bottle. Now, one of the things, ooh, let's see, titanium white. So this is the golden titanium white. And on here somewhere, it is going to say PW6. Right here, it says pigment PW6. And you can see on my list here, it's going to show you pigment code PW6 for titanium white right there. All right, so that's going to help you with your on your color mixing journey if you know those pigment codes. So I encourage you to go back and watch some of my other videos about acrylics and color mixing and download this and try some of the color mixes for yourself. So again, I wanted to say welcome to my Easter show today. I wore Easter egg earrings just for you. For the show. And I hope everybody has had a lovely day. And it is now time to get started with what we are going to be doing this week for our art class. And it is swiping. Swiping. I don't know. When my kids were little, there was swipe or no swiping, right? From Dora the Explorer. And that's what always comes up in my head when I think of swiping. But also, it can also be called squeegee painting. So sometimes you'll see that where somebody puts blobs of paint and then uses a squeegee to pull the paint out and create a painting. So I have a bunch of new paintings on Whatnot that we will be going through and auctioning later after the workshop. But I wanted to show you some of the pieces that I made as part of the preparation for this workshop. So these are, again, this is all acrylic paint. So tonight we're going to be working with watercolor or mixed media paper and acrylic paints. And you can see here, this one is a very simple one. Now I'm doing it on a size of paper that easily will, it can easily be matted in an 8x10 mat. So you'll find that most of my artwork that I'm doing on paper, I'm doing it so that it'll fit into a particular size of mat. So here, for instance, is what this piece would look like if you were to put it in a mat. And the paint is a matte paint, meaning it's not shiny also. So I makes it much easier to photograph when you're working with paints that have a matte finish instead of a shiny finish, right? A lot easier to photograph. And then I'm going to show you, this is a series of two different pieces. And I'm going to show you how I taped off a larger piece of paper in order to do these two pieces at the same time. So there's this one and then this one, and they're called Orange Swipe 1 and 2. But the interesting thing is these actually both came off of one piece of paper. So I'm going to show you how I did that. And that way you can create what are called series of paintings very easily because you'll have the same paint out and you can just swipe it on the two different paintings that you have on the same sheet taped off. Now, besides that, you can also take these acrylic swipe paintings, and I had one that I wasn't that happy with. I was like, I really don't like the finished painting. To me, it didn't look finished. And I thought to myself, well, just take some acrylic markers. So you can get markers like this with acrylic paint in them. Just take an acrylic marker and make some designs on it. So that's what I did here. And so I'm using the exact same technique in the background. I created a swipe painting, and then I went over top of the swipe painting with both acrylic markers, and I also used something called woodies. Woodies are these wax pastel crayons, and I put some marks on it with that as well. So you can, and this is available, it's called Rain Over Mars, Rain Over Mars. So if you are on Whatnot and you want to go take a look at that, it's in the Buy Now tab on Whatnot. So these paintings that I'm showing you right now, I have already preloaded into whatnot, and they'll be auctioned later. Now, let me show you something that's a lot bigger than that. And this is, so it's a larger format, right? A larger size. And here you can see I used a shimmer paint. So the shimmer paint is like this from Pebeo, and it's called Dyna paint. Can you see where it says Dyna right there? And so the Dyna paint has a shimmer to it, and I use the shimmer as the last layer there of a swipe painting. So it gives it a lot more, like, to me, it gives it a lot more excitement when you use a little bit of the shimmer paint in your pieces. But that is a larger size. And of course, if you have the bigger the squeegee, the bigger piece of paper or canvas you can work on, because these are acrylic paintings. So you absolutely can work on them on canvas. So you could do a much larger canvas using the exact same techniques. It just depends on how big of a squeegee you have, okay? All right. So let me share with you some artists that some of them I follow and some of them I just found on Instagram in particular that are, they do swipe painting or squeegee painting. Now, the most famous artist that I didn't print off anything for you, but if you put in his name, you'll find a lot of information. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not, but his name is Gerhard Richter, or Gerhardt, Heart. Gerhardt Richter. And Gerhardt Richter made that squeegee painting very popular. And he would do massive paintings with, putting the paint on and then squeegeeing it out. And you can use this technique with oil paints as well as acrylic paints. But if you're doing oil paints, you need to know a lot more about color layering and color mixing, because you don't want to just have a big brown painting if you didn't mix the colors right. Oh, and that's why those kind of artists get paid the big bucks, right? Because what they're doing is not easy. But what I'm going to show you tonight is easy. And it's one of those things like Lay's potato chips. You can't eat just one. So when I sit down to do these swipe paintings, I do lots and lots and lots of them at the same time. Okay, here is the first person I'm going to introduce you to, and it is Danny. It looks like Guys First, Danny Guys First. Don't worry about the Instagram name. Afterwards, I go into the description of the video on YouTube. And so by tomorrow, there will be links to these artists in the description of the video for you. So you don't have to try to remember it right now. You can just come back to the video tomorrow. Okay. And so here he has, he does something that is more like a Gerhard Richter type of effect, and that's squeegeeing quite a bit of paint across. So you can see these are some examples of what his artworks look like. This is his account on uh, Instagram. And so here are some more. Do you see how there's a lot of scraping going on there? A lot of layers and a lot of scraping. And these are large paintings on canvas. And then here is a gentleman, Juras Georgiev. Okay. Like I said, I'm not going to expect you to remember these folks right away from Instagram, but um, I do like to show you. So if you do go searching for him, that is what his profile picture looks like. And so similar to Danny, the last person, this gentleman uses oil paint and creates these swiped color block paintings. And sometimes he works back into it with the tool to get texture as well. So he'll put in the swipes and then goes back and creates texture on top of the swipes. Now, the person that inspired this particular workshop is someone, Lara Muniz, it looks like her name is, but her account is Casa Molanas, Molanas. There it is right there, Casa Molanas. And you'll see in just a moment when I show you her artworks that they look similar to what I just showed you that I was doing. I love watching her videos on YouTube because she shows you the combinations of colors that she does when she swipes. So do you see these? That's a whole pile of swiped paintings right there. And then there's another combination and there's another combination. So you'll notice, oh, that was a single one. This is the pile right here where she was just going to go through a whole pile of them. And you can see that she works a little bit smaller. They look like they're about 8x10s, which would fit into an 11x14 mat. And she does different sizes. And then looking at her account led me to Emma Connolly Art. So this is Emma Connolly Art. And I love what she does to take it to the next level. And that's what I'm going to show you next, Emma Connolly Art. And so these are some of hers. There are a whole bunch of small ones that she does. And they're all swipes, but each swipe comes out a little bit different. Look at this one, the round one. Hey, Mark V, welcome in, welcome in. Happy Easter. And what I love about this one is the way that she did her swiping and then she cuts out a circle. So I'm going to show you how I would do that with some of the works that I started with, that I started making. And then here's one that's a little more just random swipes, but fun, right? You see how colorful that is? So you don't have to cover your whole surface with your swipe, do you? You can leave some white space and make the artwork be about the swipe itself. Now, here's some more of Emma Connolly. I did 2 sheets with her because I just love her work. Now, you see how the yellow is sitting on top of these other colors and it actually looks yellow? The reason for that is she's using an opaque color yellow. So paints come in both transparent colors and opaque colors, but isn't this fun, these circles that she does? It blew my mind. I was like, oh, that's an excellent idea. I like that. She also sometimes will cut them into hearts. And I've done that before with collage. Two, two, what is it, Valentine's days ago. So not 2025, but 2024. I showed how I make collages and then I cut a heart out of the collage. And so it's a similar thing, but in her case, she's doing the swipes and then cutting the circles or the hearts out of it. So as I said, I will be putting the links um, to those artists in the description of the video on YouTube. Now, if you're on Whatnot and you haven't joined my YouTube channel yet, you can either go to my YouTube channel, just type in Tristina, an artist, and you'll find me. And then right now we're doing lives, and so it would be under the live tab. Or you can always go to my website right here, deetzart.com. And of course, at the bottom of the page are links to my Instagram and my YouTube. So you can find it that way as well. Again, I'll leave it up there for just a second if you need to take a picture of that. Oops, I think I need to bring it up just a little bit so you can see everything clearly. Okay. There we go. Now tonight, what supplies are we going to be using? I mentioned already the acrylic paints. So we have transparent paints and we have semi-transparent paints and we have opaque paints. So depending on what layer of the painting you're in, your swipes, you may want to get an opaque color or a transparent color. So how do you know the difference? Well, I'll give you a rule of thumb. See where this says fluo for, for fluorescent? All of your fluorescents for the most part are transparent. Okay, so the way I know that is A lot of paints will have a little block on it like that. So if the block is empty or white, that means it's transparent. If the block is like this and it has a half black, half white like this one, that means it's semi-transparent. And if your color looks like your little block looks like this, if it's all black like that, that means that the paint is opaque. And so, of course, you want to use your opaque colors for the most part further on in your layering, because then it'll cover over what's underneath it. Or not, you may want to put a transparent color on top. I like my favorite combination of transparents is to put the transparent, nope, this one, the transparent yellow where it says fluorescent yellow. I like to put that on top of pink, this fluorescent pink, and then it creates a vibrant orange that looks amazing. So I'm sure I'll be doing that for you as we go through this. Now, some of the paper I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using watercolor paper and um, mixed media paper. But you could also use canvas. I like to have a canvas pad. Often I'll use a canvas pad if I want to see what the effect is of doing this process on canvas. I start with a canvas pad instead of a stretched canvas. A stretched canvas is like this, where it's on stretcher bars. There are wooden bars underneath that, but those are more expensive. So you can practice on a flat sheet of already primed canvas, and it comes in something called a canvas pad. So those are fabulous to start with. Tonight, we're going to be using watercolor paper and mixed media paper. I'm going to show you. So anything that will take wet media, you need to be sure that the paper is heavy enough to take wet media. So normally I would say from 90 pound and up. Most watercolor paper, like this watercolor paper from US Art Supply, is 140 pound. And I like these because it's a spiral bound notebook. So for these supplies, don't worry, I'll have a link to the supplies in the description of the video on YouTube for you tomorrow. But this US Art Supply, the nice thing is this comes in a pack of 3. So if you look here, I've got 3 of them. And why? Because when you're in the throes of creating, I find that I'm creating multiples at the same time. I'm setting something aside and letting it dry. So having books like this, where this is just the right size to fit into the 8x10 mat. I was showing you earlier how I like to I like to have notebooks or papers and canvas that fits into a mat like this. So these books are 8.5 by 5.5 is the size. So here it says 8.5 by 5.5. And it also says it's 140 pounds. So that's a nice heavy paper to be able to take it. And then it says that it'll take wet media. So you can use watercolor or wet media, and acrylic is a water-based wet media. So these also have a little perforation right here. If you want to pull it out with the perforation, I prefer to cut it because I like the clean edge myself rather than the perforated edge. But uh, the option is there with the perforated edge. So this book right here that's currently empty of artwork actually had this piece in it that I showed you earlier. So this is called Intersectionality 4, this piece. And this is done on this paper. And then I cut it out of the notebook. And then you'll see here that as I was practicing for this workshop, here's another one that has a page done. And here's another one that has a page done. The nice thing is now that these are dried overnight, I could just go to the next page and keep creating in the same notebook if I wanted to do that. But then, of course, if you're going to do more than one at a time, you need to have more than one notebook on hand, right? Because If this is wet and I want to leave it in the notebook and I flip to another page, then I'm going to end up messing up my artwork, right? So get yourself multiple books of the exact same thing. Just so much easier for this kind of process. And those were watercolor. That's watercolor. Now, you know, my other favorite watercolor paper is the Canson XL watercolor paper. It's 140 pounds, cold press, excellent studio watercolor paper. My favorite. I usually watch for when they're on sale 2 for 1, and that's when I'll buy 2 or 4 of them just to be sure that I have plenty on hand. And it actually looks like this. It has blue at the top, and then these are loose sheets like this. Excellent workhorse for the studio, especially when you're experimenting and learning something. And then the other paper that I like to use for this kind of experimentation is by Arteza. So let me find the cover for you. So this is Arteza. Arteza is a brand of paints and supplies. And this is an 11 by 14. This book is 11 by 14 size. And it is mixed media paper. It's 110 pounds. So that's fine. It's above the 90 pounds that I like to have, a minimum 90 pounds when I'm doing this type of work. And then these also have perforations. And let me show you, I was working on top of this sheet. So it'll have perforations down the side here to make it easier to get the sheets out, okay? And I actually take the smaller sheets often and I will put them on top of here and then work on top of a pad like this because it's nice and heavy. And then later I can just paint right over top of the paper. It makes it easy. Now I like to tape off. So I use blue painter's tape or white painter's tape, and I tape off my um, pages. So in this case, remember I said earlier, I'm going to show you how you can work on a series. That means you've already got the paint out anyway. You might as well do more than one at a time, right? So this is a series that I was working on. When we go over top of the table, I'm going to show you exactly how I arranged where this was going to go on the page and tape it off so that I can get 2 paintings out of it. And that's what these 2 were right here. These 2 orange ones were done on 1 sheet of mixed media paper. There's one of them there. And then here's the other one here. And so I was using exactly the same colors, and it was a twofer like that on the page. And that just makes it a lot easier, doesn't it, to make more and more and more. And this size is a 7 by 6 by 7 approximately. So it'll fit right into an 8 by 8 mat. Let's see, here's an 8 by 8 mat right here. So it fits right into an 8 by 8 mat. So I'm always thinking ahead to, okay, what size mat am I going to put this in? I don't want you, the person who is thinking of buying artwork, um, to get a size that's not a standard size. So it makes it difficult to figure out what kind of frame to put it in, unless you go to a framer and spend more money, which, trust me, I have plenty of paintings that are in beautiful frames that I love my framers. Now, if we're going to do um, the swiping and we're going to do it on smaller pieces like this, then I'm going to use something called a wedge. This is a silicone tool. Actually, sometimes if you're watching cooking shows and they're making cakes, is that, curated crates? Welcome in over on Whatnot. Uh, so sometimes you'll see people using these silicone wedges when they're doing cake icing, right? To make a nice smooth cake icing. So this is a silicone that can be used for food or for artwork. But if you've used it for artwork, I don't recommend you go back and use it for food, okay? But this is a handheld wedge like this this is a Catalyst wedge. I don't know if you can see there, it says Catalyst, and it's by the company Princeton brushes, okay? Princeton art brush. And that's the handheld wedge. There are actually many different types of, some of them have jagged edges here. So it comes with a lot of different edge treatments. And then they also have them like this on a brush. So if you're standing back, there's a large painting in front of you and you want to have a brush handle, then this is the same kind of silicone. You see that? And so I can do the same thing using this. And especially if I have a painting on the wall or on an easel that I'm working on, sometimes it's easier to use the paddle like this. Now I'm going to show you a trick with these paddles that I saw during a demo, and it just totally blew my mind because I didn't know it. These pop off. So you see the top here, and then you see this here. So if it's inconvenient to have the handle for what you're doing and you want more control and you want to hold it in your hand, just pop the top off. And then it's very comfortable to hold it in your hand and do this process similar to the wedge like this. Isn't that awesome? I had my my catalyst wedges like this or brushes for a long time, and then I saw that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Now they come again in different shapes. So this one has a long edge here. This one has a medium edge here and a small edge here. So I can get two different types of swipes or widths of swipes with those. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that. Now this is another catalyst type of spreader, but I don't recommend that you use it for the process, the swiping that we're going to be doing. And the reason is that this is hard. This is a hard edge right here. This is more for scraping than it is for doing an even lay down of paint, which is what we're going to be doing. So again, this is by Princeton Catalyst, but it's hard and it doesn't really work well for the process that we're going to be doing, okay? But I wanted to show it to you, so if you're standing in front of the Princeton brushes, you don't think, oh, I'll grab that one, it's cheaper. It's cheaper for a reason. It's hard plastic, it's not the silicone. Okay. Oh, and then there's another, well, and here is another one. So I wanted to show you some of the different tops that these silicone tools have. So they come in all different kinds of interesting shapes. So you can get like really cool marks if you want to get marks on the top of your acrylic painting or your oil painting. But we're not going to be using this one tonight. I just wanted to show you that there are tons of different options available for those tops. Now, something else um, that I found does not work well. So this, right, was the hard plastic catalyst, didn't work well for the swipe technique. This one right here is also a catalyst, but it's a little bit too, I don't know, let's put it this way. This one with the short edge here does much better at laying down the paint than this one does right here. And it's because this is more rounded and this one is more flat when you get to the edge. So you want to work with a flat surface to be doing the pulling. Now this is called a color shaper. So I don't know if you're familiar with these, but I love my color shapers. I have them in different firmnesses and different widths. So this is the firm, this gray, and this works perfectly. My favorites are these two right here that I like to use for the swiping, but sometimes these come in handy as well. And this one, notice this is also a color shaper, but it is black. It's harder. This one is an extra firm, extra firm. So this one's a 1.5 inch and this one is a 2 inch. Okay. And you can buy them in sets. Like I recommend this firm. The firm is like perfect for what it is that we're going to be doing. The extra firm is too firm. And so I find that it pulls more paint up and away from the project than it does laying the paint down, which is what we want to do when we're doing our swipes, okay? So I don't recommend the extra firm for what it is that we're going to be doing tonight. You can also use like a hotel key, all right? So like this, or this is an old AAA plastic card, right? So you can just take this, and this has enough flexibility that if you just want to try this technique, you don't have to go out and buy the fancy tools. Just try a plastic card, right? You're always getting them in the mail, or one of them will expire. And then you're like, oh, okay, I can use that to do this process. So I'm going to keep it handy because we're going to do that with one of those as we go. And then I also recommend that you have just a couple of brushes handy. You see, these are little detail brushes because sometimes you do a swipe and you don't get the paint where you want it to be, or you get the paint where it shouldn't be. And so you can either add a tiny bit of paint or remove a tiny bit of paint with a brush. And is it cheating? I don't think so. I'm just trying to get a specific look. And so I'm using those brushes to just do a little bit of finessing, right? Now, of course, we're going to use some scissors to cut that round shape that I think is so exciting, like that Emma Connolly artist. And then you're also going to want something called palette paper. Now, this is a little more fancy. So it comes in a pad. It's a disposable palette, and it has this nice shiny paper on it that we're going to use to, um, well, what I do is I'll put paint on here, and sometimes I need to sort of put the paint on there a little bit and then pick it back up again to have the right concentration of paint along the edge to do my swipes. So that's what I use the palette paper for. If you don't have any palette paper handy, you can always use either tin foil or you can use wax paper. All right, that'll also work in a pinch, in a pinch. All right. And then for doing the extra work on top, like this one right here, I just use acrylic markers. You can find acrylic markers all over the place. Pebio's been kind enough to give me acrylic markers. And so this is like one of my favorite colors here, the fluorescent pink. But I have all different kinds of colors in the acrylic markers. You can even buy huge sets of acrylic markers. So you see that right there. And they come with acrylic markers, have different types of tips to them. So most of the ones that I use are these 1.2. You'll see on the end it says 1.2, and that means that it's the size of the bullet tip that it is there. So that's what we're going to be using tonight. Um, Let me see. I'm just looking to see something else that I find handy, something to have on hand is wipes. So little baby wipes or, something like that. And I just find that if you need to do a quick cleanup, these can be very helpful. The other thing is to have spray bottles. So handy, two spray bottles, one spray bottle of water for cleanup. And if I have been busy doing something and paint hardens on my silicone tools, then, and the water won't easily take it off, then I can use alcohol. So what kind of alcohol? I always get that question. What kind of alcohol? Just what you get in the grocery store or the drugstore, rubbing alcohol. Okay, any kind will do. Because rubbing alcohol or alcohol is a solvent for acrylic. So if you get acrylic paint on your clothes, and it's not a staining color, some colors stain and there's nothing I can do for you. But if it's a color that doesn't stain, um, you just soak it in some alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and then agitate it a little bit. And often you'll find that you can get it to come out of your clothes or off of your floor or whatever it is that it got into. Okay. I find that's very helpful. Another medium that we sometimes use for this process is called matte medium. So do you see there, matte medium? And the reason that I use the matte medium is for, let me show you a for instance. So matte medium is, even though it looks white in the bottle here, it dries clear. So anytime you see something that says medium, it's likely to dry clear. And so the matte medium is used to knock down the shine of your paints. So when I was doing this set of two, what I noticed after it was dry was that one of these green swipes, or this green swipe here, was shiny. So do you see the shine in there? Where the paint is shining and everything else is matte. All the other paints are matte. So these Pebeo paints, this Studio acrylic and the Origin acrylics from Pebeo, they dry with that matte finish, which makes them really great to photograph. But I tried another paint. Let me see. I think it was, which one was it? I'm looking. I have lots of paint in front of me here. Oh, it was another brand. I may have actually, oh, here it was. So this Soho, which is from Jerry's Artorama, when I put this acrylic down, it dried in this color and it dried shiny. And I was like, ooh, okay, I don't want that shiny paint to stick out, you know? So I took some matte medium and I put two coats on. So I put one coat and let it dry, put a second coat. And now that same color up here no longer is shiny anymore. Doesn't shine anymore. And that's because I coated it with a matte medium to get rid of that shine. Okay, so that could end up being very helpful for you. Or you may want a gloss medium. Let's say you're finished with the piece and you want the whole thing to shine. Then you can go over top of it with a gloss medium instead of a matte medium, and that'll make the whole thing one sheen, one glossy sheen or one matte sheen if you wanted to do that. Okay, so I find that's very helpful. And then when we go to do those circles, right, like that other artist, we're going to use something like a, isn't this called a compass? I think it's called a compass. So this is an old fashioned one with a pencil there. And then I also have this type right here, and it has a pencil lead in there. And then you turn this and it opens and closes it. And I have several sizes. You can see small ones, large ones, but I use these to make a good circle in order to cut out, which we're going to do later. Okay, so I think that's it for describing what it is that we're going to be playing with here. And we are going to go ahead over top of the table and have some fun. Hey there, Amanda. Welcome in over on Whatnot. And thanks for spending your Easter Sunday with me. We're going to have some fun here doing some scrapes. My fingernails are so messed up from doing these swipe paintings for the last couple of days. There's like acrylic paint all over. Okay, you should be able to see everything well now. Lovely. I have some water because when we get to the point where I need my brushes to kind of clean things up, uh, then I'll need a little bit of water. But for the most part, for the swiping, we don't need the water so much. All right. So let me show you. Do you see all the paint I have here? Oh my gosh, I have so much paint. Actually, I have bins and bins of acrylic paint, you can imagine, right? Oh, so I'm going to move these back a little bit so we have a little more room. We'll move the water out of the way here. Oh, my fluorescents. I love my fluorescents for this type of technique. Hey there, Texas RN. Welcome in, welcome in. And we're just going to move these out of the way a little bit so I have a little more space here. Okay. So this is, let me make sure this is fitting in the screen. Yes. Okay. Move my chair a little bit. So this was where I took an 11 by 14. So this is an 11 by 14 book, and I taped it off. And I'm going to show you how I do that now. Earlier, I had mentioned, if you weren't here, that I like working with this kind of a watercolor pad because the watercolor paper is 140 pounds and the size here is 5.5 by 8.5. So let me show you what that looks like. And that fits beautifully into an 8 by 10 mat. So that's why I like working with these books. And then I'm doing individual like this and like this, right? So I'm doing individual pages. And of course, you can't do just one at a time because you're going to have lots of paint out. So that's why I have multiple books and I work on more than one at a time in succession. All right. But I like working this way where I use a larger sheet of paper and then I tape it off like this. And so I'm going to show you how I do that. The size of this book is 11 inches by 14 inches. So what I find fits well in here, see here again, I'm using my mat and where the tape is here, look at that, it like fits perfectly over top of these swipes. Okay. And I keep a mat handy as I'm doing my work. And I'm literally taking the mat and looking at the composition and moving this way over the composition to see if I like where it's going and if I might want to make some changes. So I have a black mat and a white mat next to me where I'm working at all times for that reason, for that purpose. Okay. Um, let's see, the other way that these can go is a square. So same. I have, this is a 6 by 6 on the inside and it's an 8 by, for an 8 by 8 frame. And I can do the same thing. I can play around with looking at the composition and decide how I want the piece to be matted when I'm done with it. So these to me are not done. They are done, but they're not done. They're done in terms of the layers that I want to put on them, but I didn't feel like they were finished paintings. So this is what I do when I don't feel that they're finished, is I go in and I use the markers or inks and I make other marks on top of them. And that's what we're going to do with these in a little bit, is we're going to use them, one to cut a circle out of and the other to um, make marks on them. So let me turn the page and I'm going to show you what I do here to get this ready for painting. Again, 11 by 14, and I use my ruler. And because it's 14, I'm going 7 and 7 here, right? Because it's 14 inches long. So I just use this and I marked my middle 7 inches and made several marks like this, and then made a line across the sheet. And then I did, this is 11 inches this way, correct? 14 this way, 11 this way. So I put the 11, there's 11 right there. I put the 11 on the edge of the page. And then I made a mark at 9 inches and a mark at 2 inches. And that gives me just the right size to be able to do either a 6 by 6 like this or an 8 by 10 like that. Okay, gives you choices, options for when the artwork is done. So again, that's at when I lay this here on the 11 on the edge, at the 9 and at the 2, I make my marks and then I just make my lines. Now, what I'm going to do here is right down the middle, I have a piece of, is this 1 inch or 3/4 inch? I'm not sure. Let's see, how wide is this? Okay, this is a 1 inch tape. And what I'm doing here is I want the tape to go right down the middle with the line in the middle of the tape. So I just get a piece that's long enough here like this. And then I look and I see, okay, where is halfway up the page? Right there. And then where is halfway this way? Make sure it's going about halfway. Boop. There we go. So now when I cut this right in the middle, there's going to be a little half an inch or so white line, white border. So let me show you here. So these are two that I did using the same technique. So you see how there's a little border right there and a little border right here. So that's what it is that I'm doing. I'm taping that off. So I have two separate pieces of artwork I'm going to be working on here. And then for the edges here, I want it to be halfway. So let's take a piece of tape like this. So again, halfway, I'm looking and I can see the white behind it. There we go, halfway, like that. So the edge is running down the middle, and the same with the one at the bottom here. I'll do the same. There we go. And I want it to be halfway. Okay, there we go. So I'm pushing it to be sure my paint doesn't go under, because we're going to be pulling the paint on the edge. What some people do is after they put the tape on, they take some of that medium I was telling you about. So they'll take the matte medium and they will run a little bit of matte medium with a brush around the edges. So I'll show you that as soon as I get the other tape on. So now we're going to go along this line, but I'm not going to do the middle of the line. I'm just going to do to the edge of the line. Let's make sure I have enough tape there. Hey, flower gazer, welcome in, welcome in. We're doing acrylic paint swiping today, and I'm showing how to take an 11 by 14 piece of paper and mark it off using my ruler, and then how I tape it so I end up with two different pieces. Now what I'm doing is I put one edge down and then here's my line going down. So I'm watching the edge of the line and I'm just bringing it along the edge. Easy peasy like that. And then this one right over here. Let's make sure we have enough tape. And we'll do this side. Oh, and Flower Gazer, happy Easter. If you weren't here earlier, you didn't see I'm wearing purple egg earrings, painted purple egg earrings for y'all for Easter. Okay, there we go. There we go. And so now we've got our tape down. Now, some people like to be sure that they get a nice clean edge when they're pulling their tape off. So there are two ways you can do that. One way is you can heat the tape and then pull it, or you can take a little bit of, um, oh, you're welcome, Mark V. Mark V said, oh, nice, thanks, about the handout. Yes, so feel free to go there and download that handout. So I'm going to take just a little bit of this matte medium. And some people find that it makes it easier to remove the tape if you just put a little bit of matte medium here. And the reason, well, what they are concerned about is bleeding underneath the tape, right? So if you want to avoid the paint bleeding, let's say that I'm going to do these pieces and I'm not going to matte them. Okay, I just want to do the piece and then sell it as is. Okay, then I may want to be sure that the paint does not go underneath the tape, right? Because you'll be doing a beautiful piece and then you pull the tape off and you have all this bleed underneath your tape and you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to mat it. Right. So this is a way that you can seal that edge using a little bit of either matte medium or gloss medium, doesn't matter. This is a fluid matte medium from Golden, but Pebeo makes it, Liquitex makes it. A lot of different companies make a matte or a gloss medium. And so I'm just putting a little bit of it here. Now, it is an acrylic product. It is going to dry clear. Okay, even though it looks white coming out of the tube, when it dries, it's going to dry clear. And that will seal those edges and prevent paint from getting underneath there. Now, if I were doing a larger piece and I wanted to be sure that I got this nicely sealed, I would let it dry and I do a second coat. Okay, but we're not going to do that tonight. But I did want to let you know if you were, if you were trying to do it professionally, um, it's helpful to do a second coat after that first coat is dry. So I'm just taking some water here. I'm going to clean off this brush real quick, like of that matte medium. You don't want the brushes to get hard. Like I said earlier, acrylic, if your acrylic paint or your acrylic mediums gets hard on your clothes or on your brushes, you can soak them in rubbing alcohol. I showed you earlier the rubbing alcohol. You can soak them in rubbing alcohol and then wash them with soap and water, and that should get the acrylic out, okay? Because the alcohol works as a solvent for the acrylic. I had one person say one time, I spilled paint on my rug. Can I get it out of my rug? I said, yep, use rubbing alcohol. And it was like, hallelujah, this is awesome. Okay, so you can see here, if I bring it up closely, you can see that you cannot see that matte medium because it dries beautifully clear. Lovely. Okay, so now when you're doing your colors, when you're doing your first layer of colors for your swipe, I tend to like bright colors. So you see the fluorescent green right here. And this one is fluorescent green and pink. And I love putting the yellow over top of the pink. That's fluorescent yellow over top of the pink. You see that fluorescent orange that it, it makes? I love that. Oh, okay. So there are two ways to do this. One way is that you can put your paint right on um, your palette paper and then pick it up with your um, wedges. There's the catalyst wedge, and this is the color shaper. But what I like to do, oh, and there's a third way. The third way is similar to screen printing. You can take a color. So let's take, this is the fluorescent, no, this is cadmium lemon, imitation cadmium lemon. So I'm going to put some color right here. So another way is similar to screen printing. So if you've ever done screen printing, you put your screen print paint along the edge, and then what, you squeegee it down, right? So you can do it similarly here. So I'm going to use my color shaper, and I'm doing it at a low angle so I can pull the paint down. Ta-da! Okay, so now we've got a nice layer of that bright yellow on there. You see there? Now, right now it looks glossy, and that's just because it's wet. Once it dries, it'll dry with a matte finish. But look at this. I have more paint on here. And so I'm going to pull it from here. Again, low angle. You see how I'm not holding it like this. I'm holding, I know, right? Mark V was like, ooh, that yellow. So this is a lemon, cadmium lemon imitation. And so I'm going to hold it at a steep angle like this, and I'm going to pull some more across. Now that's it on there. But I do often go over it 2 or 3 times to get all of the paint out. And you don't have to cover the whole area. Now let's try the card, right? This is just a AAA card. And so let's put another color down. And that was out of a tube, right? So it was a thicker tube paint. But let's do one that's out of a little jar like this. And so I'm going to shake it up and Now, the way that I like to apply the paint is I like to, this is my trick. I like to put it right on the edge. So let me just put it right along the edge here, like this. So I squeeze it right onto the edge like that. Okay. And then again, I'm going to put it down at quite an angle. And I'm going to pull it just as though I were doing a screen print. There we go. Okay. Now there was a little bit of hardened paint there. So I'm going to lift off the hardened paint part and put it on here. There we go. Now this is a more opaque paint, so it's not quite as luminous as the other one was. Now I've got some lines in there from pulling through. So if I want to smooth the lines, I'm going to use something that has more give, like this one, and then I can get a lot of, and I'm just going very lightly over the top so I can get rid of some of the lines that this hard card created. But if all you have is the hard card and you just want to try the hard card, don't worry about the lines because you can just go over it with another layer, right? So let's take this here. Remember I said you're going to have paint left over. So what am I going to do here? Let me do this. Oop. Let me bring it out and down like this. Okay, out and down. It's nice. So I just made a little nick there. I got a little bit of whiteness. So that's why I said I like having these little detail brushes, because now with the little bit of paint that's left on here, I can pick it up and I can fix that little spot where I made a little gouge, right? So that's why I always have a little brush on hand to be able to fix those little things. And most of the time it lives right in the water right here next to me. Now, if there's extra paint, let's do this. So I've got a little bit of pink over here. And let me put a little bit of pink somewhere else. So I'm just going to make it like a little, like this. Whoop, there. So now I have pink in more than one place on there. To this, get some more on there. Okay. And there's a little bit left over, but I'm just going to wipe it off. There we go. Now, I do see here that there's a little bit of a spot, and I'm like, wait a minute, I want to get it in that spot. So what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll only put it a little bit on there. So yeah, there's a doggy hair right there. Let's get the doggy hair out of there. So I'm just going to squeeze a tiny bit onto the end here. You can do it. Hold on, I got to bring it down. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit right there. And notice it's not at the very end, right? There's a little bit there. If I made that mistake and I'm like, oh, I really wanted it to be on the end, here's my palette paper. So I can just put it on the palette paper and now I've got it on the end, right? And now I can do this again, all the way out to the edge and fill that spot a little bit more. Okay, let's do that. So I find I use this color shaper a lot to do fixes as well as to do swipes with it. But I do a lot of fixing with my color shaper. Okay, there we go. So now we've got some here and some here of the pink. What else do we want to do? Now, on this one, I'm going to do a swipe over and then I'll do a swipe. I want to get rid of this white in here. Now I could do a full swipe on there. And you see how it's smaller, right? The area is smaller. So most of the time I'm swiping with this wedge right here. This is the Catalyst W06 wedge. But when you have a small space, I find it's better to use a smaller wedge, or like this one has a small area here and a tiny area here. So You see how that small area will take it right down just like that perfectly. So let's get another color. What would be a good color to go in there? I think a fluorescent pink. Oh, fluorescent pink, because we got pink here. Let's put a fluorescent pink in the middle. So same thing, I'm gonna take my paint. This is the way I do it most of the time. I could put it over on my palette and pick it up from my palette, but I find I like to just, you waste less paint if you just put it directly on. So I'm squeezing, if you put it directly on your wedge, just like that, okay? So here we go. Oh, see what happens. Nice. Okay, plenty of paint still left on there. Now I'm gonna make my angle even a little more dramatic so I can get the spots that I missed the last time. Nice. All right. Now there's a little bit of thickness on the edges here, and there's still some here, but there's some thickness on the edges. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of thick on the edge. So there are a couple of things you can do with that. One is come in with a clean wedge like this and just run it along to get rid of that. And then run it all on this side right here. There you go. And that helps to pick that up. Or you could just, sometimes I just use my finger and get that out of there. Now there's a little bit of unevenness there, which at this stage in the beginning doesn't really matter because you can put other color paints right over top of it. Now here I have a needle tool because I see you're always going to end up with little bits in there. And so I use my needle tool or I use a knife. What is that, an X-Acto knife to pull little bits out. So I always have that next to my table. Now, here's that little bit of paint left right there. So I'm going to take my brush, my touch-up brush, right? And pick up some of that extra paint. And then I'm going to come in here and where it's a little too white for my liking, a little too much of the paper is showing through. I'm just touching it up. That's why I said, even though we're doing swipe paintings, you may want to have a brush on hand to do little touch-ups like this. Okay, there we go. Now the pink is pretty much, there's a little bit more white right here. I mean, where it's a little whiter than I would like it to be, too much of the paper is showing through. So I'm just adding a little bit there. Ta-da! Okay, so now I can wipe this off. Since it's pretty fresh, I can use water and spray it on there and then wipe it off. If I had left it for a while, and it had dried on there, like there's some other paint that's on there that's dried, you can squirt it with the alcohol a couple times to take that off. Actually, here's some that's on the back there. I'm going to spray it with alcohol and give it a minute to eat into it. And then I'm going to wipe it off. And so that's a way to kind of gently, without gouging your tools, get some of that old paint off of there. Okay. There we go. Let's the rest of that pink there. So I try to clean in between layers to be sure that I don't contaminate future layers with past colors. All right. So let's see. What about down here? Instead of pink, what do I want to put on there? Let's use this. Nope, too close to the same color. Here is a purple. So instead of using that one, let's put some purple on there. So here, let's use this one. Oops, there's some dried paint right there. So here we go. I'm going to squeeze it right on there slowly. Oh my gosh, there's the paint. Isn't that fun? Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Okay, let me go back to where I can see your comments. That would help. Okay, so here's the purple. Let's figure out where I want to put the purple this time. Okay. Now, sometimes I have to turn my paper in order to get it to be at the right angle for doing the pull that I want to do. So this one, I want to come down here and then around like this. Actually, I don't want to bring it onto the yellow. Why don't I want to bring purple onto yellow? Because if you look at, let me show you the color wheel real quick, like that we've done before. So if I take my color wheel and I have purple, so this purple is sort of a red violet, and I put yellow, I put it over top of yellow, and that's not too bad. I get like a sort of purplish, but if I'm over violet right here, you see the brown that I get? That's why I don't always want to put purple over top of yellow. So let's just swipe it right here. Oh, make sure you get the angle that you want. So it's not filling all of the teeth of the paper there. Now I can turn it this way. And if I want to get the edge a little bit more, and I just bring it in here this way. It's okay to swipe in multiple directions. You don't have to always just swipe in one direction. Okay. Plus, you can go right over top of an acrylic color with another acrylic opaque color. So, no fuss, no muss. Don't worry about it. Move on to your next one. Okay, there we go. And then now I want to do a swipe of some other, like a blue up here. I think would be a lot of fun. Um, Maybe I want to do a blue shimmer right now. So this is a shimmer color. This is a Pebeo Dyna. Can you see where it says Dyna? Hey, S. Diedrich, welcome in, welcome in. So if you want, we're doing a acrylic swipe painting this afternoon. So if I want to put this shimmer blue, now I don't have to fill the whole catalyst wedge. I can just do part of the wedge, which is what I do quite often. So here I'm just doing part of the wedge. Oops, I got some extra color there. Okay, so to start out with, it'll only be this wide. All right, but the more you pull, the further across it goes, and you end up with much wider. But let's try this to start. So again, I'm going to put it here. So I put it down and then I change the angle, right? And I don't want it to be too, I don't want to push too hard because if I do, then I'll push all the paint out of the way. I don't want to do that. Okay, so you can see there's only a little bit of paint left on there. And I can go back, do it again. Especially when I'm doing corners, I find I have to do it multiple times. Okay, and now what am I gonna do? I'm gonna take my brush and I'm gonna pretty up those corners, right? Except my brush has lots of pink in it right now. So let's get that pink cleaned out of there. There we go. Now it's clean. So this is where sometimes I'll take my finger and just run it along that line right there because there was a big edge left there. And now I can go with the brush a little bit, go in with the finger. There we go. And then now what I'll do is I'll pick up some of this from the edge here. And let me turn this like this to make it easier for my hand. And now what am I going to do? I'm going to create that edge so it looks so that the arc looks more correct, okay? why I said it can be really helpful to have a brush, a detail brush handy, so I can work on the arc on the edge there. So you see these artists and you look at their work and you're like, oh, it's so perfect. How do they do that? Well, sometimes they come back in like this and they do some fixes. If you're not right up on top of the artwork looking at it, you can't always see the brush marks. You just see the color, right? So you don't know that they've come back in and done a little bit of fix in there. Fix it. Okay, there we go. So now I have a better arc that I'm more happy with. Go, come on. Nice. Okay, okay, okay. Fabulous. So I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot happier with the way that came out now. Oopsies. Yee. Okay. So that's doing an where you want to make sure you have enough room around you so that you can move your arm and get the arc, and make sure you have enough paint on here to make that arc work. Let's see. Okay. And then there's a little bit of a line here. The line, there's a little line here, and the line is actually from the first layer that we put down. So I'm just going over top of that line to make sure that I get paint everywhere. Nice. Okay, cool. Looks better now. Awesome. So now, I don't want to put this color down here. So I'm going to wipe this off right here. And that's the nice thing about putting the paint directly on your tool, is you don't have a lot of waste. If you do it the other way that sometimes I do it, if I'm using a larger piece, then I will take the paint and put it on um, my palette next to me so that I can pick up a lot more paint constantly. Um, but for small pieces like this, I find it's better if you put it right on there. Now there's still paint left on here. I want to get it cleaned. So this is just water. But of course, if the water doesn't work, then I will do the water doesn't work, then I'll bring in the alcohol, right? Okay, there we go. I took most of it off. All right, what color do we want to put down here? What's our next color for down here? I like that blue, but there's a different kind of blue that's a little more, I love this one right here. This is Deco Art Americana. It's called Bahama Blue, but it doesn't have the sparkle. This one, that's the Dyna paint, has a sparkle in it. And this one is very matte. So let's try this one again. This is a fluid acrylic instead of being out of a tube. So it's a little more watery. And let's use the Catalyst wedge. So I'm going to squeeze it out and run it along the edge here. Nice. So there you go. And then where do I want to put it here? I think I want it to go here. So I've set it down, angled down, kind of a light touch, and just let it come off of there. Go around like this. Now you can notice that a lot of it has come off because it's fluid. It's not the same as the paint that has more body to it. But that's okay. I will just add some more and keep swiping. Now there was a little bit from the lid here that I need to pull out. You don't have to. Some people just leave all the chunkiness in there. It's not a problem. Okay, so I can just reload this, right, with some more paint. Easy peasy. And then let's do it again. Okay. Bring it around and down. There we go. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? It didn't give me the full, but how am I going to fix that? You see the paint that's left on here? I can take this color shaper and I can just put the paint onto the color shaper. See that? This one's not coming on very well because it's too fluid. Blah. That's okay. I'll just put more on. So I'm going to repair this edge using the color shaper that looks more like a brush, right? So there's a little different control than when you're using the wedge in your hand. So I've got the paint here. Now with the mat next, with the palette pad next to me, I can make sure that it's all the way down there. And then here, I'm bringing it in, and this is how I fix the edges. So I'm grabbing some more for the edge here. And I'm bringing it in there. So if the color is more or less matte like this one is, then you can just put another layer right over top of it. Okay, tiny bit more. Wait, yeah. And I'm just going to bring it right down here. Nice. Okay, so I prettied it up a little bit, right? Okay, it's not going to look exactly like it's going to look at the end because, of course, you're going off the tape here, right? So you have to imagine what's it going to look like with a crisp edge here and here instead of a all of this around the outside. But I love this Bahama blue in the deco art. Love that color. Okay, there's a little bit left on here, not much. So what am I going to do with it? I may just do this like that. There we go. Just a little bit of blue right here on the corner. So you'll constantly be evaluating the composition and adding more. Now, some of the artists, when you watch them on Instagram, it looks like they're just going one right after the other, right after the other. Well, those are spliced together, okay? They're not going one right after the other after the other. They're taking their time, they're looking at the composition, they might have decided on the colors ahead of time, but it takes longer than what they're showing you in their 15-second videos, okay? It's just the way it is. Oh, okay. So let's clean these up so we can go to another color. I love where this one's going right here, but the yellow is like, woo, a little bit much. So what's a good color to go over top of the yellow? I actually think a blue will look good over top of the yellow here. So I have a little bit darker blue, right? So this one was the Bahama blue. And here's one that's a little bit darker. So let's take the one that's a little bit darker and I'm going to do a swipe up here. So let's see, did I use this one before? Yes. Okay, cool. There we go. I'm going to do this one. Which tool am I going to use? Which one? Which one? I think I'll use this one right here. So here we go. Squeeze it out. This one's starting to get hard. Okay. This one, you know how it goes. Sometimes when you have paint for a long time, it'll start to get goopy on you. So before I put it on here, I'm going to put it on my palette like this and make sure that it is any of the goopy part of it is ready to go. Okay. So let's do this right here. and around like this. Oh, not bad. Not bad, huh? It's a little bit light down here. So let's just see if we can fix that a little bit. Pick up a little bit more here and come back this way and bring the angle down. There we go. There's a little bit darker. Just a little bit darker, right? Because I'm putting another layer on. Okay. There we go. Nice. Sometimes when you start a stroke mid-stroke, you'll get lines. And so that's why I like to generally go over the whole thing. Ooh, I like what that's doing right there over top the yellow. Nice, right? Now, do you see this right here? You see that little bit where I went over the edge? So I'm going to fix it, right? I'm going to use a little bit of the just plain water here on my brush. And I'm going to come in while it's still damp. It's helpful if the layer underneath is dry, right? So a lot of times you're waiting, and you can use a heat tool to do that. You can use a heat tool to speed along the drying. Okay, so that got a lot of it off of there, fixed it. And of course, if it didn't take it all off and I want to fix it, I have the color right here, right? So I can just take a little bit of this color on my brush and I can go right over top of that. And then that'll help. You know, as long as the color is opaque or semi-opaque, that'll help. You can sort of fix it. There we go. So remember, leave your colors out so you remember what colors you were working on, right? Okay, so that was a different kind of repair. I'm not going to worry about this one. Can you see that little dot right there? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to leave that one there because it's blue on blue, so you're not going to notice it so much. And I've got more paint here. Let's put a little water on it just to be sure it's flowing. And of course, I'm going to use this on the other one, right? Somewhere on the other one. Can you see that where I'm mixing it and picking it up? Yeah. Okay. Now let's pull this off. If you weren't here earlier, these catalyst tools that are on a handle, so you can use it on a big painting, the tops come off like this. So see how it goes on the inside of there? The top comes off, and then that way you can use it more like the wedge like this. You have a little more control over it. So let's do that here. Where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? And on this one, I'm trying to make a decision where I want it to go. Okay, I'm going to go here. And I'm just going to bring it straight. Now, I don't have a straight edge here, and that's because the paper was warping as I was doing it. So now I'm going to come this way. There we go. Nice. I like with the yellows, when you do these blues over top of the yellows, I like the way it optically mixes into a green. Do you see that? The way it mixes into a green? Oh no, can you see that? I'm wondering. Okay. So you don't always have to do a curved edge. You can do it more like this, more linear, and not everything has to be curved. Okay. Oh, I have more paint. What do I do if I have more paint and I don't want to waste it? Well, I keep next to my seat these are Jack Richardson watercolor paper cards. These are what I use to make um, my original art greeting cards. And so I will just swipe that extra paint on here in order to use it up. And then that just becomes a background for something else, normally for a collage that I do. Okay, so that's an opportunity to use up that paint and not to have it be lost, right? But there's all that paint. Let's use some water. Clean up each time. Okay, there we go. Unless you're doing, if you're going from say light to dark and it's all in the same color family, you don't necessarily have to clean every time if you don't mind there being residue, because some of the artists I showed earlier in the show, um, the swipes they do have a lot of residue. There's a lot of history from each swipe. And so you don't have to clean like this. It's just when I do my swiping, that's what I like to do. Okay, so I'm gonna need a new paper towel at this point. And now on this piece down here, I can see a tiny bit of yellow, but there's no yellow anywhere else. So of course, you know, I'm gonna wanna put some yellow on there, right? So let's get an opaque yellow. So it kind of goes over top of some of this area. Hey, Leanne Phoenix, welcome in, welcome in. Happy Easter to you too. We're doing acrylic paint swiping with silicone tools tonight. If you don't have silicone tools, you can just use an old like plastic hotel key card or something like that. So what we're doing now is we're going to go over top of this with an opaque color. So you see how the block here, completely black, that means this is an opaque color. So let's take this opaque color and see what happens when I try to put it in there. Ah, you are quite welcome. Quite welcome. Let's do this. And okay, which one do I want to use? What do I want to use? I think I want to use this. So what I was showing Leanne is you can take your paint, whether it's in a tube like this or something like this, which is a fluid, and you can put it directly onto your silicone tool like this. I just take my time and deposit the paint like that. Bink. And then that way you waste less paint, right? Um, where do I want it to go? What direction? How do I want it to go? Okay. Oi, choices, choices. Okay, okay, okay. I think I want it to go like this. So I'm going to cover most of that pink up. Bring it down and then finish off the end over here. Okay. But you see how it covered up for the most part, everything underneath there, because it's opaque. There's plenty of paint on there. Now I'm gonna take it and I'm just gonna make sure that I've got it up correctly on here. So I can go back and swipe again and get that turn. I wanna get that turn in really well. Okay. And now I can come back this way. So I'm turning the paper, turning the paper. And I see where the paint is. I'm going to put it down and then make the angle like this so that I can deposit the paint where I want it to go. And then slowly bring it around. Nice. Okay, cool. Now, if you look here, there's a little line right in there. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take my damp brush and I'm just going to see if I can deposit some paint right there. Sort of cover that up. If I want to adjust, I can use this small edge here and come in here like this and flatten it so it doesn't look quite so much like I corrected it, as it were. Okay, and then I want to get some paint, so I'll pick up the paint from here onto the edge like that. Yeah, and then I'll bring this and I'll work on just the edge. So you don't have to go back over top of things like this. You can just do the swipe and live with what, live with what it does. That's fine too. I just find that I like to go back over the swipes and get them just the way that I like them to look. There we go. Okay, no better. And I used up most of the paint, didn't I? And I got rid of that like white spot that was there. Okay, so now what do I want to do up here? What I want to do up here is I want to look at what is the composition looking like with a mat, right? So that's why it's so important to have a mat available as you're working. So I'm going to take this mat. I'm like, you see how I can move it around and then make decisions as to what's showing, what's not showing, like that. That might be better. And then there's the square mat. So this was the 8x10 with a 5x7 hole. And this is an 8x8 with a 6x6 hole. Hey, Crafty Candace, welcome in, welcome in. So this one, basically I can just move like this up and down. Ooh, I kind of like that because I'm not feeling this pink in this particular composition. So I kind of like the way that looks there. But that's what I interesting perspective with the mat. Yes. So I always have my mats handy as I'm creating so I can make decisions as to how it's going. Where what do I want my final piece to look like? So there's that. That's kind of interesting. But there's a bunch of blue. Let's bring it down like that. Hmm. Too much yellow. Too much yellow. So that tells me, yes, on this one, I need to do another swipe, right? To pull something in. Now it's not dry yet because I just put that thick layer on there. So you can, because it's acrylic paint, it's okay to use use your heat tool to help it along. The only caveat I would say with the heat tool is don't get it too close and hold it in one position. I was doing something the other day and I did that. I didn't realize I was holding the heat in one position for too long. And I'll show you what happened in just a second here. So that starts it to, so this is what happened here. I had this piece and I don't know if you can see right there, there are little bubbles. So it bubbled and it started blistering because as it's drying, that air wants to escape, right? As it's drying. And so that happened. Yikes. Okay. So I am going to finish these off camera. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to go to the ones that I started um, to prepare for the workshop. So but that gives you a feel for how I swipe, how I repair, how I look at it with the mat in order to know where my composition's going. So this is one that I had been working on yesterday. So let's tear this one out of here. And we're going to do some more mark making on these before we take the tape off. So I'm just going to set this one aside right now. Woohoo. And then let us, this is just acrylic paint. So that means you can go over top of it with acrylic ink or acrylic markers. You can go over top of it with these woodies, which are a wax pastel. You can use your neo colors. Let me find my neo colors. Love my neo colors. Ooh. And the acrylic markers, right? And acrylic inks. So let me, I want to just grab my Neo colors here. So these are my non-water soluble. These are Neo Color 1. That means they resist moisture. Okay. And so you can use the Neo Color 1 to do work over top of these as well. And they're by Karen Dosh, and they are a adult crayon, I call them. They're a wax pastel. Okay. But I'm going to leave the wax pastels for a minute. We're going to do some work with the acrylic markers. So I have large acrylic markers and I have the smaller tipped acrylic markers. Okay. So most acrylic markers are pump markers. Do you hear that? Let's see if you can hear that. There's a little marble in there. Even these big ones also have a marble inside them. Okay. So I could either use a brush and go in and make marks with my regular tube paints if I want to, or I just love using the markers. They're fantastic. So let's see, here is a Posca marker. And where is my black one here? There we go. There's an acrylic marker. Now, as I'm using the acrylic markers, um, I like to have a palette pad next to me. And the reason is because you have to get the paint to flow off of the tip. And so you're going to need to pump that tip a couple times to get the paint to flow. Can you see that? Yeah, I think in order to get the paint to come out of the tip. So now that the paint is out of the tip, I can just take this. Let's see what kind of design. Ooh, I was thinking, I really like my outside. I have some nasturtium growing, but before I do my mark making, I'm going to turn this around a couple of different ways and see what. Ooh, I like that. Likey, likey. You see the intersections there and the pink on either end. Ooh, I like that a lot. I like that. And that little pop of orange. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now let's look at the square. So before I start making marks, I want to decide whether I'm going to work with it as a square. I don't know, y'all. What do you think? As a square or as the, like this? I think I like it as the 8 by 10 myself. I like the way that the marks are flowing there. The black one, yes. Thank you, Leanne. I kind of like it like that. Like it's not showing too much of this pink, just enough. Wow. Okay. So now that I know what my orientation is going to be, then I can go in and make some marks uh, in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to treat this like I'm going to make some marks on it like my nasturtium out in my garden. So I'm going to take this black. You don't have to use black, of course, you can use any color that you want. Um, ooh, why don't I use a green? There's a really cool green that I have here. If I can find it, come on, green, this one, this one. It's an emerald green. Let's try the emerald green. See what it looks like. So what am I going to do? I'm going to pump it, make sure that the paint is flowing. And then I'm going to draw some of the leaves of my nasturtium, right? And it sort of goes like this. And then another leaf down here. Uh, sort of behind that one. And sort of goes like this. And remember, there's no crying in acrylic, right? I've told you that before, because if you don't like the design that you did, you can just paint right over top of it. You know, no fuss, no muss. Um, What? I know, I know. Okay, so I'm gonna do one that's sort of on its side like this. And so it's gonna sort of go more like that. And then I'm not much of a drawer, y'all. There's certain things that I like to draw. This one, I'm just, I'm doing it from memory from out in my garden. Okay, so let's just say those are a couple of, the interesting thing is that the leaves have these long, uh, they're on long sort of stalks like this, right? Okay, so there are a few leaves. And then I'm going to do the flower. So the flower is going to be red, um, orange and red. So let me find an orange. Oops, that's red. Yeah, that's red. Let's find an orange. Orange, 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 orange. Okay, I'm going to show you where I have my markers. This is a 1980s container. I don't know if you remember going to a place where they would give you a bisque, like it wouldn't be painted, and then you could paint them, and then they would fire them, and you would come back and pick them up. But these are from like the 80s and 90s. But this one, they come in with different sections. Some have 2 sections. This one happens to have 4 sections. So I put my markers in here to separate them, right? Is that fun? So there's a yellow, there's a light orange. Where's my dark orange? I have a dark orange. There's a darker orange. So let's see what we have there. Yes, did it with my grandmother, right, Leanne Phoenix? Isn't that cool? They are so cool. What I do is when I'm on Whatnot, I watch for um, containers that I can put my markers in. So you see this. This is, made by somebody, S. Toledo. So they're handmade. And so I grab those to put my markers in. I don't care if I have like 15 of these on my desk in front of me. They're beautiful, right? They're so cool. Okay, so let's do the basics of the flower in yellow on top of this yellow. I do too. Great storage and beautiful. Exactly. Make your storage gorgeous. Let me show you this one right here. So here are all of my non-water soluble pencils. And this is a Japanese teacup, right? So I put those in there. And then this is a otani, which is a Japanese handcrafted. See, it says on the bottom. Oh, otagiri, sorry. Otagiri original. And that's where I keep those. So I have all kinds of cool, whenever I see one, and it's a decent, it's like it doesn't get bid way up, then I will go ahead and snag them and use them for my markers. And see, I need one for for these. I'm going to need to find one for those, my Neo colors. Okay, again, acrylic. Now this one has a little bit bigger tip to it. And the reason I really like the Pebeo markers, the Pebeo acrylic markers, is there's a spare nib in the top. You see that? So this pushes out and there's a spare nib. So if this nib gets ruined, then I can just put the spare nib in. And these bullet tips have a double bullet tip like that. So it really helps a lot to be able to have your markers go, as far as they possibly can. Okay, I'm over on my making sure that the paint is moving. And all right, what do these look like? And like I said, I'm just doing it sort of from memory right now. And then there's like a small one here and a small one over here. And normally I thought before this workshop, oh, I have to go print off my pictures of my garden, my garden flowers for these nasturtiums. And then I forgot because I only have a million things I have to do before a workshop starts, right? So I'm just doing it from memory. We'll figure it out. Okay, so this is acrylic paint. I love acrylic paint markers. Do any of you out there also, work with acrylic paint markers? Because I know some people who are like absolutely amazing at doing the like calligraphy and stuff with the acrylic paint markers, but I I like the Chinese brushes for doing my calligraphy. I don't do calligraphy with these. Um, okay, that goes in there, and then let's build up the color. So the reason I mention that is I can take a little brush if I want to, and just with a damp brush while the paint is still damp, I can actually move it around just like paint. So even though it's coming out of a marker, it it's just paint. It's just paint, y'all. I'm hooked on the alcohol markers. Oh, yes, yes. See, I'm not much of a drawer. Most of the time when I draw, it's like this. I show you. My favorite to draw is, let's take this color on here. I think I'll do the red one on here. So most of the time, this is what I draw. I just love doing the leaves that look like this, right? So you'll see these in a lot of my artwork. We each have our iconography, right? The things that we like to do the most in terms of shapes. So this is a shape that I love to do, just the leaves. And so this is something that I can just whip off anytime. But if I'm doing the nasturtium, I haven't practiced the nasturtium. So I'm just doing it for the first time here from memory. Oh my goodness. Okay. See, the paint is running out. So I'm going to stake it, and then whoop, now a lot of paint is coming out. Sometimes you have to be careful when a bunch of paint blobs out that it doesn't blob out onto your artwork, right? There we go. So now we've got more flow. Mo better. I didn't pump it enough the last time. Much better, much better, much better. It's coming out a lot more thickly. So this is usually what I will do here. And then this, right? So that's the shape that I like to do a lot, is these sort of skinny leaves like that. And then another thing I like to do is the triple dots. So let me just make sure the ink is flowing or the paint is flowing. So I love doing the triple dots. I guess they call it a trefoil, right? The little dots like that. So the beauty of this, working over top of acrylic paint with an acrylic marker, is it's all the same kind of paint. It's just you have the flexibility of using it in a marker so that you can do the things that you normally do with your markers, with your permanent markers. There you go. So that's an example of how I might use different colors on top of here. So let me build this up a little bit more. See how I have multiple colors like this? So I just used the light one. Now I'm going to use the medium one, just to sort of do the edges here. And then I'm going to come in with a brush. Let's use the brush while that's still wet, because it's just paint. It's just paint, y'all. So I can sort of douse it down and have it have a more painterly look to it this way. Okay, there we go. Yes. Now I'm getting a more painterly look. Oh, it's a nasturtium. What? And then I would go to the next darker color here. Let's I'm pumping it, pump it. And what I want the center, right? Because isn't the center generally a little bit darker? So I just am putting a little bit of the darker color there. And what am I going to do? I'm going to bring the brush in, right? I'm just going to feather this out. Feather it to give it a more sort of natural look. You don't have to do that. You don't even have to feather it if you don't, if you like the graphic look instead of a more natural look. There you go. Lovely. Last one is this red one. So what I'm doing is I'm working with four different colors from yellow up to red. So all in the same color family next to each other on the color wheel, right? Because on the color wheel, you have your yellow here and your red here, and these are in between. So if I work with these are called analogous colors. That means colors that are next to each other in the same family on the color wheel, then they will look good together. So now let's take the red and I'm gonna make sure that it's flowing. And I'm actually just gonna put some dots in here just for the heck of it. There we are. And now on top of acrylic, you can also come on with your micron pens or any of these permanent markers like this. So, I mean, you could use a Sharpie too, but Sharpie, this kind of Sharpie is not archival. Okay, it says it's a permanent marker, but it's not archival from a standpoint of artwork that's going to last for a long time. You want an archival paint if you want to sell your artwork and have it be something that's going to last for a long time. So I can come in, ooh, that tip is too small. So the tops tell you what the size of the tip are. And that one was the itty bitty. So this is the 0.8. And what I can do is I can come around as soon as I would suggest waiting for it to dry. Make sure your paint layer is dry. And then I'm just lightly going over it to create my nasturtium flower. But the cool thing about using these permanent markers is they will work right over top of your acrylic painting like this. There we go. And then, of course, I want to use the green and I want to create the stem. I mean, oh, that was black. Oh, well, that's okay. Somebody should have said something. And I was holding the black, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, does it? And so that way you can actually create a piece. And the cool thing that I'm finding here is I had that little bit of orange here, which was the pink fluorescent. So let me show you. It was the pink fluorescent with the yellow fluorescent on top. When you put pink fluorescent down and then yellow fluorescent, so pink was there, and then I did a swipe of the fluorescent yellow and it turned it orange. So if I put a couple of flowers here and they're orangey red flowers, I look away for 1 second. I know, Leanne, right? Oh, that's all right. You can go back and rewatch if you need to, right? Because I saved these to YouTube. Plus, they're also saved to past shows on Whatnot for what they keep them out there 60 days or 90 days, something like that. So you can always pop in there as well. So that's these two, and that made this brilliant orange. And so if I make a couple of flowers that pick up on the orange, then it'll all speak to itself, right? Fantastic. So that's if I'm using my swipes. Now I can use my swipes just as a painting by themselves. So this is one that I showed earlier. And this is a swipe. And I said, oh, I like that. That is a finished painting. So when I go like this, that is done. You know, to me, that's a finished finished painting. It has a good balance. I like the color combination. Finished. Okay. But sometimes you do the artworks and you're like, I'm not happy with it. It's not a painting all on its own. Then that's when I grab out, like this white is a Posca pen. You see the white right there? So that's a Posca pen that I went in and did all that. Let me show you the Posca pen I'm talking about. Where did I put it? Oh, I only have 50 million pens here, right? I know where I put it, but it's not there anymore. Okay, I moved it. Did I show it to you earlier? The Posca pen? Okay, well, it says Posca on it instead of Pebeo on it. This is another one. It's not the white one. Oh, I know where I put it. Let's see where it says Posca. So the Posca pens work great for this this type of work as well. Where did I put it? I put it over here. Yeet. There it is. So this is the Posca pen. And this is a small Posca pen, which is this size. But then there's also a big old fat Posca pen that's this size. And then here's that bright pink. So let's take the bright pink, and maybe I want to do, remember I said I like the trefoils. So what if I do this? And then there are a couple of trefoils here, right? So I can go and just play around. This color of the Pebeo marker, this fluorescent pink, is the same as this fluorescent pink. So it's great because you can use them in conjunction with each other. Now, let me show you using these, which are the Neo Color 1. Now the Neo Color 2, what's the difference between the Neo Color 1 and the Neo Color 2? Let me find my Neo Color 2s. Do I have any here? No, they're in a different place. Okay, well, the Neo Color 2 is water soluble. So I'm going to substitute this woody, but it's the same concept. It's wax and you can draw it on your surface. So let's say I want to draw it right here. And the Neo Color 2, which is by Karen Dosh, and the woody, they're both water soluble. So I can take my brush. So let's say, actually, let's say that I want to put like a little shadow in there. I want to put a shadow in there. And so I'll use this one. So this is a wax crayon, but it's water soluble, right? So I can take a brush and I can put it in here. And then I can make it a little more painterly that way. But if I don't like it, I can just get it wet like this. And I can pick it back up with a paper towel, right? So no worries. If you're using the woodies, which these are Stabilo woodies, or you're using the Caran d'Ache Neo Color 1, it's a water soluble, they're water soluble crayons. Now this, I'm sorry, Neo Color 2 is the water soluble crayon. This one says Neo Color 1. Can you see that on there? Neo Color 1. Let me get, this one is later. Neo Color 1. So Neo Color 1 is a wax crayon. It's water resistant. Once I put it down, that's it. Okay, I'm not picking it back up again. So let's see where I can just do a little something fun here. With this, let's just add a couple of circles of this light pink. So cute. And a big circle right here. So I like to use the Neo Color 1 to make permanent marks, but they look like crayons. They look like a kid's crayon, so they're fun. So these are the Neo Color 1. You see the little marks there and the marks there. So those are the permanent marks that I made using these adult crayons. These are Light Fast. Okay, so it's just like an adult crayon. So here, I can make any shapes, of course, that I want using these. And let's put another little one right there. Okay, so I have my favorite shapes. Usually I'm making circles, triangles, or squares with them. Sometimes I'm just making dots with them, dashes, that kind of thing. I might do something like this. Let's see. Will the yellow work on top of the green? I don't know. Let's see if it's opaque enough. I might just, it is opaque. Okay. So here's the yellow. And then I like to put little stitches like this, just for something different and fun, right? So you have to play around with mark making and see what your sort of favorite kind of marks are. So I like doing these kind of marks, something like that. But that's permanent, and it's also the Neocolor One is not water soluble, so it'll resist water. I can go over top of it with water here, a little brush. I can go over top of it with water, and it's just beating up. It's not going to do anything to it. Okay. So that's how you can put like permanent marks and not worry about if you go back over it with a water soluble medium. There we go. Okay. And let's take one that I was working on before, and I'll show you. Well, let's work on this one, and I'll show you how I would put a circle on there. So I'm looking at it in the light so I can see where the lines are. So let me just sort of lightly draw that in so I know kind of where I'm working in. So there's light behind it and I can see through the light. So I'm just drawing a line where the artwork is so that I'm going to keep my circle inside these lines because that's where the paint is, right? There we go, like that. Lovely. Okay, so I've got my lines here just by looking at it, holding it up and looking at it in the light. Can you see that? I think you can actually see through it on camera. And then we are going to use a compass. Huh, if I can figure out where I put them. There we go. There are two kinds here. There's this one, which moves like this. And there's a pencil and a point. And then there are these. This is also a pencil lead. Oh, pencil lead and a point. These are nice because you can turn it to make it wider or more narrow, and then it'll stay there. Where this one, sometimes when you're working with it, it can adjust. This one's pretty hard though. This one's pretty good. A lot of them will have a lock, like a little thing at the top. Either you turn it to lock it, or you like bend it to lock it, or you turn it to lock it in place. But we are going to use this one right here. So I'm going to be able to take it out, take it out, take it out. And I'm somewhat in the middle here, somewhat in the middle. And then I'm looking just to see where the circle's going to go. Here, 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 here. Okay, I can go a little bit wider. Oop, a little bit wider. Okay, there we go. There we go. There we are. There we are. Good. Okay, so now what I like to do is I like to hold the part where the pin is with one hand and then turn it with the other hand. Okay, so I'm keeping the point and the location where it needs to be, like that. Boop. And then I'm going around. So they better match up. Yeah, it matches up. Perfect. Right? They better match up. Okay, to store it back in my box, I need to turn it again so that they'll come together. Now there's a little handle here where you can a little nut you can unscrew and put more lead in there when that lead is done. So I'm going to bring this back. and put that back in the box like that with my other ones. Ooh, okay. A lot of times people use these because you can just take a pencil and put it in there. So it's a lot easier than trying to find the leads that go in here. But drafting tools, you know, if you look for drafting leads, you're fine. So now we've got the circle going here and we're going to cut that out. Woohoo! So let's do it. Let's see what we have. What I like about this is when you put the circle on, you can't really see what it is that you're doing from the top. And I like that. I like that little bit of like mystery, right? So this is the idea for this. I saw from an artist that I introduced at the beginning of the show, and I will show you her work again. So if you weren't here in the beginning, you'll be able to see it. Let's see. And it's so fun. So fun. Her works are so gorgeous, but she does her swiping and then she'll do a bunch of other work on the piece. And then she'll cut out the circles and mount them on a backing. So here we go. Close, close to perfect. It's not easy to cut perfect, right? Okay. This is going to be fun though. Oop. Okay. Let's see here. And a little bit more. Now I could make sure that this would fit onto an 8x10 backing. Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Look at, isn't that fun? Oh my gosh, that is so much fun. Now watch, 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 watch. Something that this other, I'm going to show you the other artist real quick, and then we're going to do some splatter because I love splatter. And she uses a lot of splatter. So here, the last one that I had shown earlier, her name is Emma Connolly Art. Emma Connolly Art on Instagram. And then, so do you see the circle here where she did a whole bunch of swipes and then she cut out and then she did some spatter. I'm going to show you the spatter. And here's one here that's mounted. So she put it onto a uh, square square canvas and then put it into a frame. And she did a little bit of spray paint over the edge, which is fun. She also did some mark making on there. You can see that right there. So much fun. Emma Connolly. So I'm going to take this one. Ooh, I can see just a tiny bit there where that at the very end, it wasn't quite big. There we go. That's better. So I'm going to show you how to do a spatter. Actually, let me get this out of here. And I'm going to bring this notebook back, or this big, okay, I'm going to bring this big pad back. So this is what we were working on, right? But if we go back here, you're going to see that I was working on some other pieces on here. I like to use this 11x14 to put my smaller pieces on, sometimes to take them, tape them down and work because it's a nice big pad. And so it's very stable and it gives me a nice flat surface to work on. But here, we're going to put this here and I'm going to show you how I spatter using these markers. Okay, so we have a little bit of that beautiful pink and we have some orange. So this is kind of an orange like that, right? Um, of course, there's red. Let's do some marks with the pink, just because. So there we go. Just throw some marks in there, just for something different. But that's the same color pink as that over there. And then, oops, let's take this orange that looks very similar to this one. And we'll put just a couple of circles on here, just for the heck of it. There we go. I like to do circles that have heavy sides to them. Let's see here. Just for something a little different. Okay. Now, to do a spatter with your acrylic markers, as long as they're acrylic markers that have a hard tip like this, what you can do is you can shake them up, make sure they're nice and juicy. And then I'm going to juice the tip. So that means I want to get lots of paint into the tip. Oh yeah, there's a lot of paint in this tip. It's already juicy. Now I can either spatter it like this on my hand, or I can get a brush. So let's use one of these Catalyst brushes from earlier. And okay, so I'm getting small, you see the small spatter there? Now, if I want to go with bigger spatter, which most of the time I want bigger spatter when I'm doing the spatter thing, then I use the big fat ones. So you see the big fat ones here, this size. So let's take this blue. Which blue is this? This is Caribbean blue. And then, so this has big top to it. So again, I'm going to juice it up by going up and down in order to get the paint to flow. And then let's spatter this one. Now I'm getting bigger spatters. Yes. Now I've got bigger spatters. Do you see the bigger spatters there? Yeah. And let's see, I have the yellow here. The yellow will look nice as a spatter. This is the big yellow one. This is a 15 millimeter tip here. So I'm juicing it. And then, ah, yes, love it. Oh, fantastic. Look at that. You see how fun that is? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Such a great time. All right, so you can do your your swirls or your swishes, and then with those swishes, you can cut them out like this, so you like don't know exactly what you're going to get as you cut it, and then you can do more mark making on it. Um, I could come back after that's dry. That's all acrylic, right? So I can come back after it's dry and do more drawing or mark making on top of it till I'm happy with it. And then what that artist was doing was putting it on a square mat, but I don't have a square mat here. I have an 8 by, let me find it here. I have an 8 by 10. So I'm just going to give you an idea of what it would be like. So if this were square, let's say 8 by 8, then you could put that, I could glue that down onto there. And then wouldn't that make a beautiful piece? Just like that. And of course, you could spatter off the edge like that artist did, Emma Connolly. You could draw off the edge. You could put rings around it, maybe gold or silver rings around it. It would look fabulous. Sky's the limit, right? Sky is the limit. But that's how I would finish something like this that I started with the swipes. Huh, that was fun. Perfect. Good timing. Good timing. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and we'll try some swipes yourself. I think the swiping is so much fun, and I gave you tons of tools that you can use to make it work. Make it work, whether it's simple or whether it's something that you want to buy the tools like this. I will have the links to these tools in the description of the video by tomorrow morning um, on the YouTube video. So if you do want to find out more about these tools and see links to them, they will be on the in the description of the video on YouTube. Okay. Oh, that's so fun. That makes me so happy to see that right now. Life is good. Okay, so um, that is the end of the workshop.